If you've ever been to a corporate holiday party, you know they're like the Hunger Games, but with cheap wine and questionable karaoke. Well, my wife didn't need the karaoke to humiliate me. She found her own way. You never think it's going to be you. People always say that, right? You hear stories about infidelity, about the office husband, or the boss who's just a little too friendly, but you brush it off. My wife, Kate, was ambitious, sharp as a tack, and always seemed so committed to us. We were one of those couples people envied, or at least I thought so. It started subtly. A few months ago, she got a promotion at her marketing firm. Big deal, right? She was thrilled. The new title came with a bump in pay and more opportunities to network, which apparently translates to staying late for dinners, impromptu brainstorming sessions, and my personal favorite, team-building retreats. I told myself it was all part of the game. She was climbing the ladder, and I was proud of her. But then things shifted. Kate talked about her boss, Richard, like he was a Marvel superhero. Richard is just so dynamic, she'd say. He really knows how to motivate people. I wanted to be happy for her, but something about the way her eyes lit up when she said his name made my stomach churn. I wrote it off as jealousy. Nobody wants to compete with someone named Richard, let alone a Richard who's charming, loaded, and running the show. Then came the holiday dinner. Kate was unusually cagey about it. She told me it was just a work thing, and I didn't have to come, but she'd barely finished her sentence before I was buttoning up my nicest shirt. It wasn't that I didn't trust her. It's just that I didn't trust anyone else. Walking into the restaurant that night, I noticed Kate looked flawless in her little black dress. Not flawless for me, though, flawless for someone else. Her smile was polite but distant, her attention elsewhere. Maybe it was the stress of hosting. Or maybe, deep down, I already knew. I didn't plan to do anything dramatic. I sat through the appetizers, the speeches, and even endured Richard's smug laugh echoing from across the table. It wasn't until dessert that I realized what I had been ignoring for months. The way she leaned in toward him, the light in her eyes when he spoke, it was as if the entire room faded whenever Richard opened his perfectly moisturized mouth. It hit me like a freight train. I was a third wheel of my wife's on dinner table. By the time the night ended, my resolve had solidified. I wasn't going to explode in front of the corporate crowd. I had a better plan. Sometimes, revenge tastes better when you let it simmer. You know what they say? Hindsight is 20/20ths. Looking back, the signs were there, plain as day, like a bad Netflix plot twist you saw coming but ignored because you didn't want to ruin the fun. The night of the holiday dinner opened my eyes, and suddenly, the memories I'd shrugged off before started screaming for attention. The first clue was the perfume. Kate had always worn this light floral scent, her signature fragrance for years. But one day, she came home smelling different. It wasn't a subtle switch either. It was bold and musky, the kind of scent you'd expect on someone trying to make a grand entrance at a boardroom or a bedroom. When I asked about it, she casually brushed it off. A colleague recommended it. Thought I'd try something new, right? Because people are always spritzing their coworkers with luxury cologne samples in meetings. Totally normal. Then there was her wardrobe. Kate's always been stylish, but lately, it felt like she was dressing for the cover of Forbes, the Affair edition. Tailored suits, designer heels I'd never seen before, and dresses that hugged her figure a little too perfectly. She said it was all part of making the right impression at work. I'll tell you who she was impressing. Richard, with his perfectly pressed shirts and smarmy grin. And the lunches? Oh, the lunches were rich with irony. Kate used to pack salads or leftovers for work, practical, efficient, just like her. But suddenly, she was all about these fancy team lunches. Sushi spots, French bistros, and a steakhouse she claimed was a work meeting necessity. When I asked how she was affording all these lavish meals, she'd laugh and say, "Richard's treating the team. He insists." Yeah, I bet he does. The kicker, though, was the gym. Kate and I had never been gym rats, but one evening, she came home with a membership to this high-end fitness club downtown. The kind with eucalyptus towels and personal trainers who look like they just stepped off a runway. "It's for stress," she said, flashing me a bright smile. "I need to start prioritizing self-care." At first, I thought, hey, good for her. But then I noticed she was spending an unusual amount of time there. Late nights, weekend mornings, always leaving her phone in the car so she could focus. I'll give her this. The woman was dedicated to her routine. And Richard? Oh, he was the poster child for corporate predator chic. Always a little too polished, a little too charming. The kind of guy who probably calls his Portia she. During the dinner, I caught him sneaking glances at Kate when he thought no one was looking, his eyes lingering in a way that made my skin crawl. Once, she laughed at some lame joke of his. One of those forced laughs where you throw your head back and touch the guy's arm. That was the moment I realized it wasn't just Kate dressing differently. It was Richard's cologne I'd smelled on her months ago. Every little detail, every odd moment that had once felt insignificant, now felt like pieces of a puzzle I didn't want to finish. But here's the thing about puzzles. Once you start, you can't stop until you see the whole picture. And oh, I was going to see it. I just had to pick the right time to put the final pieces together. You'd think a husband would need just one smoking gun to decide his marriage was a sham. Not me. I guess I'm stubborn, or maybe I was just too naive, hoping it was all in my head. But when I started connecting the dots, there were no more excuses to hide behind. The evidence was overwhelming, and with each revelation, I felt the thread of trust unraveling faster than I could hold on. Let's start with her business trip. 2 weeks before the holiday dinner, Kate mentioned a 3-day trip to Denver for a client presentation. Normally, I wouldn't have thought twice about it. She traveled often for work. But something didn't sit right. She was unusually vague about the details, dodging my questions with the usual, "Oh, it's just boring work stuff." The night before she left, I noticed her packing this little black lingerie set, the one she hadn't worn since our honeymoon. My stomach sank, but I told myself she just wanted to feel confident. Because, confidence is really important when you're pitching PowerPoints. Then there was her phone. Kate's always been protective of her privacy, but lately, it was like Fort Knox. Her phone never left her side. Not at dinner, not during movies, not even in the shower. Once, while she was asleep, I saw her set it face down on the nightstand, and curiosity got the better of me. I picked it up, but of course it was locked. The kicker? She'd changed her passcode. I guess trust works both ways, right? And let's not forget the Instagram post. A week before the dinner, I scrolled through her account and found a photo of her team at a rooftop bar. There she was, standing just a little too close to Richard, holding a glass of champagne with that telltale glow. The caption? "Cheers to a great team and even better leadership, barf." I don't know what burned more, the champagne I was paying for or the fact that she was toasting their leadership. But the moment that sealed the deal? The receipts. Literally. While cleaning out her car one Saturday, I found a crumpled receipt from a swanky restaurant downtown, dated the same night she'd claimed to be working late. It was for 2 people, and the total was enough to feed a family of 4. The kicker? She'd ordered a bottle of wine I know she hates. Who was she drinking it with? I didn't need to guess. Every detail built up in my mind like bricks, each one heavier than the last. By the time the holiday dinner rolled around, I wasn't just suspicious. I was determined. This wasn't going to be a quiet conversation or a whispered accusation. No, this called for something bigger, something unforgettable. Because if she wanted to put on a show with Richard, I'd make sure she got a standing ovation. Revenge, they say, is a dish best served cold. Well, I wasn't just serving it cold. I was serving it on a silver platter, garnished with humiliation, and paired with a side of poetic justice. If Kate and Richard thought they could play me for a fool, they had no idea who they were messing with. The plan started taking shape the moment I found that receipt in her car. It wasn't just a receipt. It was an invitation to dig deeper. I spent the next week gathering every shred of evidence I could. Texts, photos, social media posts, they all painted a clear picture of the dynamic leadership Kate had been so enamored with. But this wasn't just about exposing her affair. It was about creating a spectacle that neither of them would ever forget. First, I needed the right stage. The corporate holiday dinner was perfect. Public, formal, filled with people they'd least want to embarrass themselves in front of. Richard's co-workers, Kate's peers, even the CEO of their company. They'd all be there. It was the kind of audience that demanded a flawless performance. Next, I assembled my props. I started with a digital scrapbook, emails, messages, and photos that I'd found on her laptop when she'd carelessly left it open one evening. I even found a photo of Richard and Kate at some fancy rooftop bar, his hand suspiciously close to her lower back. These weren't just receipts. They were visual gut punches. I compiled everything into a neat little slideshow. If you're imagining PowerPoint, think again. This was a cinematic masterpiece, complete with captions and timestamps. Every sordid detail laid bare, with no room for denial. But I wasn't done. I wanted to add a personal touch. That's when I remembered the necklace Kate had started wearing recently. A delicate gold chain with a small charm. She'd said it was just a little something she treated herself to. Funny, because I'd found the receipt for it, signed by Richard. I knew that necklace was my trump card, the smoking gun I'd need to drop the final curtain. The pièce de résistance? A little help from technology. I purchased a voice recorder and hid it in her purse one evening when she left for the gym. Sure enough, I caught a juicy conversation between her and Richard, complete with flirty banter and enough incriminating remarks to make even the most seasoned lawyer blush. I wasn't proud of snooping, but when your wife is practically handing you the evidence, why not put it to good use? Timing was everything. I coordinated with the restaurant staff where the holiday dinner was being held. The maitre d', a guy named Andre, was surprisingly enthusiastic about my plan. Maybe he'd been burned by love too, or maybe he just wanted a good story to tell his coworkers. Either way, he agreed to help me set up the projector and ensure everything went off without a hitch. Finally, I prepared my demeanor. I wasn't going to storm in like a jilted soap opera character. No, I'd be calm, composed, the picture of a man in control. Because nothing unnerves people more than quiet, calculated fury. By the time the night of the dinner arrived, I was ready. I wasn't just attending a corporate holiday party. I was about to steal the show. The stage was set, the props were in place, and my audience was unknowingly waiting for the performance of a lifetime. It wasn't revenge anymore. It was an art form. And I was the artist. The restaurant buzzed with holiday cheer as the dinner got underway. Laughter, clinking glasses, and the hum of small talk filled the air. Kate was in her element, gliding through the room in her sleek black dress, charming colleagues and clients with practiced ease. Richard wasn't far behind, his ever-so-polite arrogance on full display as he basked in the attention of the crowd. They thought they owned the night. They were wrong. I waited until the dessert course. Timing, as always, is everything. When the servers brought out the creme brulee and espresso martinis, I stood up, tapping my glass gently to grab everyone's attention. The room fell silent, heads turning toward me. Kate froze mid-sentence, her smile faltering as she noticed me holding a small flash drive in one hand and a remote in the other. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my voice calm but loud enough to carry through the room. I'd like to take a moment to celebrate someone very special tonight. My wife, Kate. A smattering of polite applause followed. Kate's face turned a shade paler, but she forced a smile. Richard shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Kate, I continued, my eyes locked on hers. You've been a source of inspiration for me. Your dedication to your work, your passion, your creativity. Truly remarkable. The room chuckled awkwardly, sensing an edge in my tone. Kate's lips pressed into a tight line. She knew something was coming. I thought tonight would be the perfect time to share a little project I've been working on, I said, holding up the flash drive. A tribute, if you will, to your hard work and extracurricular activities. Kate's eyes widened, panic flashing across her face. Matthew, no, she said through gritted teeth, barely above a whisper. Ignoring her, I nodded to Andre, who dimmed the lights and started the projector. The screen came to life, and the first slide appeared, a photo of Kate and Richard at a rooftop bar, his hand firmly on her waist. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Let's take a little walk down memory lane, I said, advancing the slides. Emails, text exchanges, receipts, even the incriminating audio recording, all carefully curated for maximum impact. Gasps and whispers filled the room as the evidence unfolded. Matthew, stop this, Kate hissed, standing up. Her voice quivered, but I wasn't finished. Stop? Oh, Kate, I'm just getting started. I advanced to the final slide, a close-up of the gold necklace she was wearing, with Richard's initials clearly engraved on the charm. This, I said, pointing at the screen, was a thoughtful gift from Richard. Charming, isn't it? The room erupted. People whispered furiously, glancing between Kate and Richard, who now looked like a deer caught in headlights. Kate reached for my arm, her polished exterior completely shattered. "Matthew, please, let's talk about this in private," she begged. "Private?" I laughed coldly, pulling my arm away. "You mean the way you kept this private?" "No, Kate. Everyone deserves to see the truth, including your dynamic leader over there." Richard finally spoke up, his voice trembling. "This is highly inappropriate, Matthew. Let's handle this like adults." "Adults?" I shot back, my voice cutting through the chaos. "You mean like seducing a married woman while hiding behind company dinners and business trips? That kind of adult?" The room went silent again. Kate's eyes filled with tears, her carefully constructed image crumbling in front of everyone. She stepped toward me, her voice breaking. "I'm sorry. Okay, I made a mistake. Let's just leave and talk about this." I took a deep breath, the weight of the moment pressing on me. Then I turned to the crowd. "A mistake," I said, my tone dripping with venom. "Let me ask you all, how many mistakes does it take before you call it betrayal?" Kate stood frozen, tears streaming down her face. Richard, looking utterly humiliated, grabbed his coat and made a hasty exit, muttering something about legal action. I didn't care. The damage was done. As the murmurs of the stunned audience faded into the background, I grabbed my coat and turned back to Kate one last time. "You can explain yourself to whoever you want, Kate, but you'll do it without me." And with that, I walked out, leaving her to pick up the shattered pieces of her carefully curated world. The cold night air hit me like a slap as I stepped out onto the restaurant's parking lot. My heart was racing, but my head was clear. It was over. I had done what I came to do. Behind me, muffled voices buzzed from the restaurant. No doubt people dissecting the spectacle I'd just unleashed. I lit a cigarette, something I hadn't done in years, and took a long drag. That's when I heard it. Hurried footsteps crunching on gravel. I turned to see Richard storming toward me, his blazer flapping like a cape and his face red with rage. If it weren't so ridiculous, I might have been intimidated. "You think this is funny?" he growled, stopping just a few feet away. "You just ruined my career over your insecurities." I stared at him, letting the silence hang heavy in the air. Then I exhaled the smoke slowly, deliberately. "No, Richard," I said calmly. "You ruined your career the second you decided to screw around with a married woman." His jaw tightened, and he stepped closer, pointing a finger at my chest. "You're a petty, vindictive little man. You have no idea who you're messing with." I laughed, a low, bitter sound that echoed in the empty lot. "Oh, I know exactly who I'm messing with. You're a snake, Richard. And guess what? I just chopped your head off." He lunged forward, his fists clenched. I sidestepped easily, grabbing his wrist and twisting it just enough to make him wince. He froze, shocked by the sudden shift in power. "Here's the deal," I said, my voice cold and steady. "You're going to leave here, quietly. No retaliation, no lawsuits, no damage control. Because if you try to spin this, I've got more texts, audio, even financial reports showing how you've been billing client dinners to the company. Want me to send those to HR? Or better yet, the IRS?" His face went pale. I released his wrist and took a step back, watching him deflate. "Good talk, Richard. Now get the hell out of my sight." He stumbled backward, muttering something under his breath before scurrying to his car. I watched him drive away, a small, satisfied grin forming on my face. It wasn't just about winning. It was about making sure he couldn't spin this in his favor. The fallout came swiftly and mercilessly. Kate's perfect world crumbled in a matter of days. Word of the incident spread like wildfire through her office. Richard, unsurprisingly, resigned under the guise of pursuing new opportunities. Kate wasn't fired outright. Corporations love their optics, but she was quietly demoted and reassigned to a smaller, less glamorous role. The whispers in the break room and the sideways glances from her colleagues were enough to push her into quitting within 2 weeks. Her personal life wasn't any better. Friends we'd both known for years turned their backs on her. Some tried to remain neutral, but it's hard to support someone who betrayed the person they claimed to love. Even her family, normally so protective, expressed their disappointment. Her own sister called me to apologize for Kate's behavior, admitting she'd suspected something was off but hadn't wanted to interfere. By the time our divorce was finalized, Kate was a shadow of the confident woman she used to be. The settlement heavily favored me, thanks to the evidence I'd collected and the excellent lawyer I hired. She walked away with little more than her car and a suitcase of clothes. The house? Mine. The savings? Mostly mine. I even kept the dog. As for me, I walked away clean. I sold the house a few months later, moved to a new city, and started fresh. Therapy helped me process the betrayal, but honestly, the act of reclaiming my life felt like therapy in itself. I even joined a kickboxing class because, hey, why not? Kate tried reaching out once or twice. A text here, an email there, always filled with some combination of apologies and self-pity. I never responded. She made her bed, and now she could lie in it, alone. People say revenge doesn't heal you, and maybe that's true. But it sure as hell feels good when justice is served.